What's up, everyone? So normally, these VAJ philosophy sort of things that I've been trying to do were from my laptop with a better setup, maybe better audio, better background. I don't know, but I just felt compelled to speak on something that came my way over the course of the weekend, and it's not surprising, but it's still just as disturbing. A woman who I've been very close with, who was married to a good friend of mine, who I consider a sister, and her children I consider niece and nephew. She contacted me over the weekend and had informed me that my niece, Michaela, who is biracial, was approached in a bar by a group of approximately 10 grown men, and she's in her early 20s, and she was physically pushed around, and then a woman emerged from the group and slapped her, called her the N-word, and told her she didn't belong in that bar, she wasn't welcome, and to go back to where she came from. This, to those of us who have experienced any forms of racism, you generally experience more than one bit of it. This is a bit extreme for some, but it's norm for others. But if you've experienced the racism, you understand it. And if you haven't, please listen closely, because there's a lot to be said about this. I find that and a lot of you will take this wrong, and personally, that's fine. But to call our, this country the land of the free and the home of the brave is sometimes laughable. And I say that because we're not free from this sort of oppression in this day and age, and nor will we probably ever will be, as long as there are cowards teaching this sort of hatred and acting on it. And again, land of the free, we're not free from a lot of those things, and there are certainly not a lot of brave people in our society. It took no bravery for 10 grown men to try to single out a much smaller person, male or female, overwhelm them with numbers, and then have somebody actually assault them. There's nothing brave about that. And I dare say that the people who perpetrated this and crimes like this against other citizens are the ones who claim to be the most loyal to, home of the brave. There's nothing brave about that. You're not defending anything. It's very much the same mindset to defend a bar against a person of color just because you don't want them there is very much along the same lines as people who would admonish like gangbangers for saying you can't be on this block because this is where we, sell our dope or, whatever else. What are you defending? You're defending something that you don't own and that everybody has a right to. So the other half to the cowardice charge that I level against people like this is that the coward in them will not allow them to seek education, to learn truths beyond what lies they've been taught. It won't allow them to actually learn what other cultures have actually brought to society. It won't allow them to learn that the things that they've been taught have been lies, and a lot of cultures do that. So, but I am focusing on this. This is outrageous, and it bothers me because it is my niece, but it's bothered me in a lot of other instances. So this is not just a single moment of outrage that I'm expressing. Definitely cowardice. And the other part to the cowardice in this society is that there are so many people who have stood by and watched, knowing that it was absolutely wrong what was happening, but out of fear of what I'm guessing is they did not want the anger or the hatred to turn towards them as a sympathizer, stood by quietly. That's exactly, that to me, that's got a lot of cowardice behind it. there was probably a room full of people in that bar who saw what happened and did nothing about it. And that's cowardice. And there's been a society of people who have stood by and watched. And this is on many levels, whether they've stood by and watched, you know, black patrons at diners be, treated, poorly, or, men standing around watching sexual assaults happen, or, heterosexuals watching, hate crimes against gays, or, Christians watching things happen against people who worship differently. There's so many examples of it across the board that in some way, shape, or form, every demographic has probably shown a large amount of cowardice. And that's unfortunate. Education is the key, in my opinion. This is where we have to start to learn things about one another, and again, dispel the myths and the lies that we've been taught in our own bubbles. We have to pop our own bubbles and start to see outside them and realize that really on a global scale, on a human scale, this is just good versus bad. I don't even want to say evil, but this is just good versus bad. I can find good people across the board of all walks, whether it's sexual orientation, how they choose to worship, ethnicity, nationality, what have you, any sort of background. I can find good people. And I can also find, bad people of all walks. So I would rather align myself with good people of all walks rather than having to feel like I had to adhere to certain demographics based off of stereotypes and pigeonholes that society has put me into, to say you can only associate with these people or you're of them, so you have to be around them. BS, absolute. I have put myself out there on many occasions to say, when it comes to just being a black male, I will certainly, champion for the equal rights, fair treatment, things like that. But I will not get out and march on behalf of, people setting a sequence of events in place that started with a crime that has led to their own treatments. There's certain things that I don't want to get behind, and I will still champion for equal justice. And if that falls into their vein, I certainly understand that, but I can't get behind a lot of things. So that's where the good versus not necessarily bad in some cases, but bad choices falls into play. And I don't know if feminists feel that way when they say, I don't want to, I'll champion for all women, but I can't, cheer for the, the empowerment of women who do porn, or, things along those lines. I think we all come across, what we consider to be our gray areas that maybe test our ideologies. And I'm sure I can get some blowback for that. And I can certainly accept that. And maybe I just need to grow and see a larger plane of acceptance. But it does not mean that I agree with poor treatment of people just because I don't agree with the choices that they may or may not make for their everyday, survivals or just existence. Going back to the original, I'm very disturbed to know that this has otherwise broken my niece. I've found through following up on the story that she's been, decimated by this, and rightfully so. This is something that I think that we overlook when we don't look into what PTSD can actually mean in a lot of instances. And in my belief, I think that PTSD in certain circles and demographics is overlooked, and it's not given the fair assessment that it would be for other groups or in other circumstances. And I think this is certainly something that can rival, just anything else. To be approached and basically attacked by a group should certainly allow somebody to feel a certain way with PTSD. Right now, her mother says that she is, really flushed with a lot of hatred. And to my response to that was to understand that this is a learning experience, and hatred is not going to, give you something to learn from. It's definitely something to be more aware of, be more cognizant of. And because she hasn't experienced much direct racism in her life, I'm sure that this is a bigger, shock to the system. And with that, I hope that she can see that this is not a time to fall in for hatred towards all people, but to certainly have a focused amount of vitriol for those individuals who perpetrated this against her. I can only surmise that the best way that we can have a healing energy and bring more solutions is to present ourselves as agents of good, as ambassadors of peace and humanity. And this doesn't mean that it necessarily has to adhere to a solely Dr. King-esque sort of approach. But when people are hurting, the best thing that we can do is teach them and show them that not all people are that way. It doesn't mean we have to have an apologist strategy. It just means that we can present ourselves to say, hey, some of us are here, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we agree with what these people have done. And that goes across all levels, all planes. Again, whether it's gender, whether it's sexuality, lifestyle, orientation, whether it's religion, any of those things, we can always reach out and extend an olive branch simply just by being good people around. It doesn't mean we have to be apologists or anything along those lines. We just have to show, because in honesty, this is a fight. This is a fight. And in some fights, I dare say, you really do have to pick a side, because if you want to see something prevail, then you have to fight on that side. You have to pick a side to say, if this is what I want for society, I have to fight with it. I can't just hope that others do the footwork for me and I reap the benefits. This is, sowing seeds for a long winter. And we have to harvest before that cold sets in, and that way we all eat while things don't grow. This is that fight. This is the fight for survival. This is saying that we will not put up with these sort of things. We will speak to it when we see it. We will not allow other people to be attacked, assaulted, and have terrorism practiced on them in front of our very eyes, hate crimes in front of our very eyes. Because what we're allowing for this to happen to a person of color, in a lot of ways, I don't know if this was, say, a sex crime, would we, allow it? Because our society teaches us certain things, that we don't allow women to be treated a certain way. So why should we allow anybody to be treated a certain way? We shouldn't allow people from other countries to be treated a certain way, or different beliefs in religion to be treated a certain way. Not in a country that is always boasted and touted to be, the gold standard for certain things. If that's the case, then we truly have to be land of the free and home of the brave. Brave means willing to stand up and fight for things that happen in this country, not being handed rifles and given camouflage to go fight somebody else's wars. Land of the free, home of the brave. That means right here in this country, in this society, and we spread that across the globe. Or we actually start learning what other countries have started to realize are wonderful practices. Not everyone's perfect. We are not, neither are other countries, but we can certainly potluck and learn things from other societies. So I have talked plenty. Hopefully some of this has made sense. Hopefully some of you have endured the full, 14 minutes and almost 15 seconds now. Feedback is certainly welcome. I'm willing to hear both sides of the coin, as long as it's respectful and has a solution at the end of it all. But guys, we got to do better. Again, this is a fight. And we do have to recognize that. So in a fight, you have to kind of ask yourself, what side am I on? Have a fantastic day. Peace, love, unity, solidarity.